All right, today we're diving into one of software development's most, let's say, debated topics, test-driven development. You'll hear developers swear by it, and you'll hear them swear at it. So what's the real story? Let's find out. And this quote right here, it really gets to the heart of the mindset shift TDD asks for. The whole idea is to stop thinking of tests as something you do after you're done, to find bugs. Instead, they become the very tool you use to build quality in from the get-go. Yeah, there's not a lot of middle ground with TDD. It seems to inspire either total passion or just intense frustration. And you know the reason for this huge divide? It usually boils down to a few really persistent myths. So that's what we're going to do, separate the myth from the method. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with what TDD even promises to do. Then we'll look at its course cycle, that whole red-green refactor thing. After that, we're going to tackle the two biggest myths head-on, that it's too slow and that it kills good design. And finally, we'll wrap up with what I think is the real payoff of doing all this. First things first, before we can bust any myths, we have to get on the same page about what test-driven development actually is. So at its absolute core, TDD flips the whole traditional code first, test later model completely on its head. The really crucial part is that you write the test before you write the code. Think about that for a second. You're not just planning to check your work later. No, you are defining exactly what your code needs to do right up front before a single line of production code even exists. That test basically becomes your blueprint. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? Well, it all comes down to the engine of TDD, a really simple, iterative cycle that guides the whole process. This is the loop that developers live and breathe when they're doing TDD right. And it all comes down to this simple three-step mantra. First step, red. You write a tiny little test for a feature that doesn't exist yet, so naturally it fails. That's the red part. Second step, green. You write the absolute simplest, most minimal code possible just to make that task pass. Get it to green. And then the third and maybe most important step, refactor. Now that it works, you go back and clean up the code you just wrote, making it better without changing what it does. And you just repeat that loop over and over for every new piece of functionality. And the key thing to get here is that this isn't some long, drawn-out process. It's a super rapid, continuous cycle. You can almost think of it like the heartbeat of your project. Each little loop, red, green, refactor, is small, it's focused, and it might only take a few minutes. It's this rhythm that builds momentum and keeps the quality of your code high from the very beginning. This cycle is so disciplined that it's actually been boiled down into what people call the 3 laws of TDD, thanks to software legend Robert C. Martin. And if you follow these rules, they kind of force you to stay laser-focused. They make sure every single line of code you write is there for a reason, an immediate testable purpose. Okay, so now we know the what and the how. But we have to face the biggest elephant in the room when it comes to TDD. It's the objection you hear constantly. Isn't all this just way too slow? And you know what? It's a totally fair question. I get it. On the surface, writing more code, because tests are code, seems like it just has to take more time. Most teams are under immense pressure to ship features fast, and TDD can really feel like an extra, time-consuming chore you're adding to the pile. But here's the twist. The myth focuses only on that initial time investment. The reality is that TDD doesn't add time, it shifts it. It moves the effort from that chaotic, unpredictable, super expensive bug-fixing phase at the end of a project all the way to the controlled, predictable beginning. So yeah, you spend a little more time up front to save a massive amount of time hunting down bugs later on. And this chart just makes that trade-off crystal clear, doesn't it? That pay-as-you-go model with TDD, it's like paying a small, predictable tax on every feature you build. It keeps your productivity stable and predictable. The other way, that's like letting all your testing debt pile up until you just hit a wall, and your productivity completely craters under the weight of all the bug fixing you have to do. And look, this isn't just theory. The data backs this up in a huge way. A really famous study from Microsoft and IBM found that teams using TDD saw a 40 to 90% drop in defects. Just let that sink in for a second. That's potentially half the bugs, or even more, just gone. That's time you get back to build new stuff, not fix old broken stuff. Okay, so TDD can actually make us faster in the long run. But what about the code itself? Does it end up being any good? Well, that brings us right to the second big myth, the idea that TDD actually kills good design. This is another one you hear all the time, that you end up twisting your design into weird shapes just to make the code testable. The complaint is that the design becomes a slave to the tests, leading to overcomplicated code or just plain bad architecture. But again, the reality is pretty much the exact opposite. TDD forces you to think about your design in small, manageable pieces. In fact, if your code is hard to test, that's usually a huge red flag that you have a design problem to begin with. And remember that third step, refactor? It is specifically there to give you a dedicated moment to improve the design. And as Robert Martin says here, your tests aren't just some afterthought you tack on. They are code. They're a fundamental part of the system, and they need to be just as well designed as everything else. And really, what this all leads to is what people call a safety net. Having this huge suite of automated tests gives developers the confidence to make changes, to refactor, to improve the design aggressively, because they know that if they accidentally break something, a test will fail immediately and tell them exactly what went wrong. So after knocking down those two big myths, a much clearer picture of what TDD really offers starts to emerge. It's not just a testing technique, is it? It's really a whole discipline for development. So what's the real payoff here? Well, it's all of this. It's the confidence developers get to make changes without fear. It's a huge reduction in time spent debugging. It's code that's naturally cleaner and easier to maintain. Your tests become living documentation. It even improves collaboration. And all of it leads to a more stable, reliable product. TDD isn't about being perfect. It's a discipline that delivers real, long-term confidence. Which I think leaves us with one final question to think about. This isn't about following a rigid rule. It's a strategic choice. So, is your team ready to trade a little bit of upfront discipline for that incredible feeling of long-term confidence?